Hi, my name's Enos Torres. I was born here in Edmonton, Alberta. My family is originally from El Salvador. I'm a first generation Canadian. My call to ministry I would summarize as a very simple one, to pursue that which I perceive to be the most immediate call that God has placed in my path. God has worked a number of amazing things in my life, all of which I am very grateful for. And I hope and I aim that my decisions and my pursuits will be a reflection of that gratitude. For this reason, I am a religious studies major at Burman University. My minor is psychology. I hope to utilize both of those in my ministry as well as my service to my fellow man. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Harim G from South Korea. I'm a fourth-year religious studies major at Burman University in the pre-professional track. I believe that my call to ministry was a gradual progress. I remember that ever since I was young, I've always looked up to pastors and I've always told myself that I would love to be a pastor. But as I grew up older and started to read the Bible for myself, I started to gradually discover that this was the right call for me to serve God and to serve His people as a minister.
My name is Courage Nyati. I came to Burman University from Vernon, BC. But since my family has moved to New Ange, BC, near Terrace, my call to ministry was kind of progressive and gradual, until I realized, God is calling me to ministry. You see, before I came to Burman University, I took on various leadership positions, especially the eldership. But at that time, I didn't think that I could be a pastor. It was not in my mind to be a pastor. And there came a point in my life when this specific pastor, started to give me more responsibilities. And in retrospect, and I look at those responsibilities, they were more of a pastoral nature. But you see, I began to derive joy in doing ministry to people, and seeing the joy that people get from things like visitations when you go to people's places and listen to them, listen to their stories, just be a listening ear. You see that people are uplifted. And at one point, I came up with a project which involved my family, in which we did some visitations to seniors' homes, where we would sing and speak to the elders, the seniors. You could see the joy that these people, and the appreciation that these people had for that. You mingle with them, you talk with them, you hug them. You could see that you were uplifting their spirit. And it is at this point when I began to hear many people ask the question, why don't you become a pastor? Well, I brushed it aside. Well, people will speak, but I'm fine with working my job, my day job, and doing the eldership role. The voices were growing louder and louder, and there were more voices asking that question, why don't you become a pastor? And I remember one individual. This person was my boss at work, but she was also an Adventist. And she asks me, why don't you become a pastor? Well, again, I brushed it aside until it hit me when my family asked that question. Before, my family did not want me to be a pastor, actually because of the experiences that I had as an elder, attending a lot of meetings, coming home stressed, coming home late, and so forth. They said, no, we don't want you to be a pastor. But suddenly there was a kind of a turnaround. My family, my wife, my adult kids began to ask, you seem to be doing this well. Why don't you take it full time? Why don't you become a pastor? You will be more effective than doing it half time, part time, going to work and doing this part time. It's not effective. Then I realized, maybe God is calling me to pastoral ministry. That is when I came to Burman University. My passion as a pastor is outreach and evangelism and outreach. Because I realize that as a church, our sole purpose of existence is to reach out to people for Christ, to bring people to salvation. And so I have a passion for evangelism, and I would, if God places me in a church, that is one of the areas that I want to address, to make sure that the church is involved in outreach. And as I mentioned, that visitations are important to me, especially I realize that there is so many people that are lonely, so many elderly people that are kind of neglected because we are focusing our attention on other things. And I've realized that there is a lot of ministry out there to the elders, to the elderly people. So visitations will be one of the main issues that I will be dealing with. And also I realized that as a church, we need to do something about the future of the church. And the future of the church rests on children and young people. Children and young people are the future of the church. So when I am blessed by God in a church, this is what I want to do. I want us to identify people that are gifted in working with young people and working with children. Ask those people to serve in leadership positions as leaders of children's ministries, as leaders of youth ministries. And we would empower those people, support those people, and give them resources to be effective. We are assured that we have a future for the church. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tatenda Jira, and I am a fourth-year religious studies student with a minor in business and a minor in philosophy. I'm from Vancouver, BC, in Canada. My call to ministry came from me not liking to be in church, so instead I decided to be what I wanted to see: young, vibrant, transparent, powerful woman in ministry. Since then, God has been able to do great things. I began preaching my first sermonette at 14, and later on I did my first full sermon at 16. And I've just been so amazed at what God's been able to do and the realms of ministry he's been able to accomplish through little old me who did not like to go to church.
My name is Robert Taylor. My major is religious studies, and I am in the pre-professional track at the Burman University. My call to ministry started a long time ago. I was young and I always wanted to know more about the Bible. And I made a promise to God in that if I can find a church that would represent the Bible and answer my questions in the most logical way I could find, then I would join. And so my uncle came to my house one day and he invited me to a tent revival. And he had to go to Germany, and the tent revival was close to the university in the Bahamas where I was attending. And so I studied late one night, and I had to walk home, and I had to walk past the tent, and I decided I'll just slip in, and just to satisfy my uncle, when he comes back, I'll tell him I went. And the evangelist was Pastor Macmillan, and he spoke from the Bible in a way that just linked scripture to scripture in a way that I have never heard. Being born into the Catholic Church, and so that just blew my mind. And one thing led to another. 3 meetings later, I was being baptized, all right? And I launch myself into church and church ministry, but I always felt that God was calling me to something more. And when I was in banking for almost 20 years, sitting in my office, I just leaned back in my chair and I decided that if I had to die, would this be the sum total of my life? And I felt that God was asking me that question, and I had to be honest with myself and to say this would not be completely representative of what I was put here on earth to do. And so I spoke with my wife, and she would tell you that she had always seen me going down this path, and we decided that as a family, with her and our 3 kids, we would leave our jobs. She was a teacher, and we would come to Canada, and I would enter into the religious studies program at Burman University. So this is where I am now.
My name is Josiah Annunciation. I am a third-year religious studies student at Burman University pre-professional track, and my call to ministry. I believe that I've received this call in 12th grade in high school. I was going through kind of a rough patch, and so I remember one night specifically asking God what He wanted from me, because I was really down, and truly I didn't know what He wanted from me. And so I asked that, and a few days went by, a few weeks, and getting through that rough patch, I noticed something that I didn't really notice before, and that was a feeling of love. Not only love from my family, but a love from the friends who were with me at school. I truly felt God's love in my life during that moment. And so as all these experiences were coming to me, I wanted to communicate this love to others. And so that's kind of the basis for my ministry, to know God, to know Jesus, and to let others know Jesus as well. And if I can say it simply, I believe that I felt the grace of God, and I want to be able to share that with others. So that is my call to ministry.
Hello, my name is Enrique Machuca. I'm a student from Burman University. I'm a pre-professional track student, and I'm from Toronto, Ontario. So my call to ministry begins many years ago. So I was just a kid, and I wanted to be a doctor. That was my goal. I wanted to study in something that kind of involved helping people, right? Over the course of my years, I faced many different challenges that shook my faith and shook me personally. So growing up, I was Catholic, and around the age of 10, I became Adventist with my family. And so learning about Jesus and learning about God really helped me, grow through the challenges I faced in my life. It was when I was going through high school where I realized that I was going through something very difficult in my life. I felt like how David states it, I was in a bottomless pit, right? And so I felt like God wasn't there. I felt helpless, hopeless, alone. And with all these problems, I thought God was done with me, right? But it was there where I found the grace of God, the power of the gospel to change lives, to save lives, and the power He has through the Holy Spirit to change who we are. After experiencing this, and the power there is in the Holy Spirit to help us, to transform us, there I found that God creates us into a whole new person, right? And the power there is in allowing us to also share that to other people, right? It was in that area of my life where I found that God, His promise where He says, never will I leave you nor forsake you, is true, right? And where He also says that He's not just going to be there in the highs of my life, but also in the lowest moments. And so after this experience, and this was during high school, I was wondering what to study. My whole life, I thought I was going to study to medicine, become a doctor. However, I decided to put into prayer in my last year. And I asked the Lord, where do you want me to serve you? So there's a famous hymn that says, I'll go where you want me to go, dear Lord, over land or plain or sea. I'll say what you want me to say, dear Lord, and I'll be who you want me to be. So that was my prayer throughout those years, right? Throughout those months. And I asked the church to pray for me, the pastors, the elders, the members, my mom, everyone I could to pray for this decision I wanted to take, because it was a huge decision, right? And everyone kind of, what I found from all that was the call to ministry, right? Through everyone praying, right? Through myself praying and realizing that I wanted to serve God in a way that involved helping people, but also speaking about the wonderful message he has for salvation to all of us, right? And so by thinking all this through and through the answers of prayers, the Lord opened the doors to Burman, and I was able to come and study here. And I believe, it's my intention and my goal is to serve the Lord in the way to preach the gospel to other people, to preach the message of salvation to people that are hopeless like I was in the past, right? And that there's something better out there, right? There's something much more efficient and something that works, right? Rather than many other things where we look for peace and for happiness that only ends in a short moment, right? But God's peace and God's happiness and the joy that there is in Jesus is something that's everlasting. And so this is something I wanted to share to other people. And my goal is to dedicate myself and the gifts and talents that God has given me to serve Him and serve other people through ministry.
Hi guys, my name is Borges Zindana. I'm from Calgary, Alberta, and I go to school here at Burman University. Call to ministry, as many of you know, I'm from the religious studies program, and my call to ministry was mostly inspired by other people. People that were able to represent Jesus in a way that I've never heard. People who were able to put importance on conversation rather than legalistic laws, rather than you can't do this on the Sabbath, you can't do this on the Sabbath. So my RS teacher was very, very instrumental into my call to ministry, because he was the type of person that wouldn't really plan his events out, plan his classes. He was just like, what do you guys want to talk about? And I found that reassuring, because it's not like, oh, this is my curriculum, this is what I'm going to teach you, because for me, that's how I was raised. We have these doctrines in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, which are wonderful, which are amazing for us to learn about. But when it's not forced upon you, but when it's kind of directed to you in a way that this is what you pretty much have to believe, there's less room for me to know what is true. What I mean by that is when I was able to look at the Bible at a different light, not as something that's legalistic, not as something that is thrusted upon me so that I know what is right and wrong, but when I actually went into the Bible and said, this is what it says, these are the many interpretations of what it says, it was able to unlock these gates of new understanding of the Bible. Because sometimes we think as Seventh-day Adventists, we know a lot, and we do, but there's also far more that we don't know. So my call to worship, I keep saying call to worship, my call to ministry was more of finding out who Jesus is for myself, finding new ways that I can reach other people and not say that this is who you have to believe, but this is who I believe in. And my hopes for you is that in your relationship and your experience with God, that you're able to achieve that same enlightening, that same passion, because I am passionate about the Bible. I am passionate about preaching the word, making connections with people, talking to them, knowing where they're from, their story. And like Jesus did, he went to people, he met them where they were at, and knew that he had the power and the Spirit with him to not force them, but if it is their choosing, to follow him. And so that is my call to ministry. That is why I'm here. And even though school may be tough, Hebrew and Greek, very much tough classes, I know that it will help me further in my ministry to help people gravitate towards the Bible and gravitate towards Jesus and not be distant from him because of what other people may have represented him as, a dictator, someone who will force you to love you, because that's not what love is. And if God is love, then it is something that is a choice, not something that is obligation. So that is me, 21 years old, and you may see me in one of your churches one day, and that is my call to ministry.
Well, good afternoon. My name is Leonardo Barbosa, and I'm originally from Venezuela, but I've been in Toronto for about 32 years, so that's what I call home right now. My call to ministry happened years ago when I went to Mexico to do a reaping series for 3 weeks. I felt the call right there, and then coming back home to Toronto, I started working with the Ontario Conference in the Department of Ecclesia for the lay ministry, and where I served as a vice president. And because of that, I was able to go to Florida to do a church planting boot camp where I met the person that encouraged me to come to ministry. All the doors were open, and here I am, 3 year of pre-professional track in religious studies.
Hi, my name is Emmanuel Olivier Jacques. I'm a second-year theology student at Burman University, and I'm taking the youth leadership track. I'm also from Quebec. My call to ministry was about 4 years ago. I was a sophomore in high school, and I had just moved out to Maine. I was by myself with other students that spoke English. I was actually not that great at English because I'm French speaker. I really struggled there because now I had the freedom to do whatever I wanted to do. And I struggled. I struggled with different types of things, right? But one day, this person showed up. It was our assistant dean, our new assistant dean. And he was awesome. His name was Peter Flores. And I respect this man so much because he truly showed me who Christ was. He reflected who Jesus was, and I wanted to be like him. I wanted to be a disciple of Christ. I wanted to show others what it was like to be a friend of God. And that was my initial call to ministry. But it took a while. I would have to say 2 months, or actually a month before university getting there, I had to choose a degree. I didn't want to do general studies, and I was interested in science. So I was either science education or theology. Which one will it be? Of course, I could do ministry in both, but let me flip a coin. Ding! Theology it was.
Salut, mon nom c'est Camille Junior. Je suis étudiant en deuxième année théologie, pre-professional track. Ce programme est destiné pour les étudiants qui veulent devenir pasteurs pour travailler dans une église et travailler en théologie pratique. Mon appel a été mystérieux, si je peux dire comme ça, et inattendu en même temps. Tout le monde, on a des dons spirituels, mais des fois, on ne sait pas comment le mettre au service de Dieu et des autres. C'était le cas pour moi aussi. Je ne savais pas comment vraiment, si je peux dire, utiliser mon talent à bon escient. Et aussi, j'avais des aspirations, si je peux dire. Je voulais un changement dans le monde. Mais malgré tout ça, je ne savais pas comment et par où commencer. Et en étudiant la Bible avec mon pasteur mentor, j'ai fini par comprendre c'est quoi vraiment le but du ministère et aussi le changement que je voulais faire moi-même dans le monde. Ça devrait commencer par moi-même. Fait que c'est là que j'ai pu comprendre, ou sinon j'ai pu répondre à mon appel et j'ai pu commencer dans mon ministère pastoral.
My name is Johan Manzanares. I am from Detroit, Michigan, and I am in the pre-professional youth leadership track. My call to the ministry was when I was in an SDA youth camp, and I remember we were in a large tent with my friends, and the youth pastor would start preaching, and the passion and dedication he would give to us. He would be giving hand gestures and moving around so passionately, and I thought to myself, wow, I want to be a part of that. And so I decided to become a pastor, or try to become a pastor, and hope for the best, but I feel like I'll do a really good job in it.
Hi, my name is Jovan Balasingham. I'm a theology major and a freshman at Burman University. My call to theology, or mission work specifically, was as a teenager. I went to a camp meeting, and I realized the impact that just one sermon can have on hundreds of young people. As a missionary kid, I spent time doing mission work in over 10 countries, and doing mission work, whether it's orphanages, schools, churches, whatever, is the most impactful thing that a human can do in my eyes. And it's the only thing I want to keep doing because of how crazy you can change someone's life. You can give someone a life, right, by helping them out. And that impact is permanent. And that's what Jesus does for us. That's what I want to do for other people.
Hello, my name is Arden Brock. I was born and raised a Seventh-day Adventist on a farm in northern Ontario. As a teen and young man, my parents and grandparents were influential in encouraging me to develop a relationship with Jesus. Around 1999, I began working in my father's business in the forestry, farming, and construction sector, where I continued to work in a variety of capacities for the next 20 years. I married my wife, Kristen, in 2006, and God has blessed us with a daughter and 2 sons, all of whom are my most incredible supporters. Over those years, we also established a small farm and were actively involved in the activities of the local church. On July 14th in 2011, my life was altered in an unfortunate farm accident that resulted in my right arm being amputated above the elbow. My call to ministry began in 2008 and returned again in 2012. During both of those calls, I remained committed to serving the church at the local level, but was resistant to following God's direction toward full-time ministry. In the winter of 2021, God intensified his call of ministry on me, and through a long chain of events, it was made clear by my church family that it was God's desire for me to serve him in full-time ministry. And to that end, I have accepted his call and am currently in my first year of religious studies at Burman in the pre-professional track.
My name is Benjamin Manzanares. I am from Detroit, Michigan. I am a first-year religious studies major, and I am in the pre-professional youth leadership track. My father is also a pastor, and I remember when I was young, my father would always leave the house to go to work, and I recall wondering what it is that he was doing and where it was that he was going. Eventually, when I reached a certain age, my father would allow me to tag along, and I'd be able to go with him whenever he'd go to work, and I'd be able to see the passion that he had for his job and the joy that it brought him to do it, whether it was visiting members or preaching or conducting Bible studies. There was one particular instance that happened in September of 2021. I was a little older at this point. I was about 17, so I understood my father's job a bit better. He and I had gone to a pastoral retreat for our conference, and it was there that I was able to witness all the pastors from that conference just dwell among each other and work together. And I saw all the passion that those pastors had and the joy that they had, just how happy they were. And it was there that I realized that I shared the same passion that my father had had. I too wanted to minister to people, and I wanted to devote my life to God and to serving others. And so that was my call to ministry.
Hello, my name is Seth Askelford. I'm from Armstrong, British Columbia. My call to ministry started when I was 17, and I felt the presence of God in my life, but I wasn't sure what he wanted me to do. And so eventually, after seeing all the pain in this world, I realized that what he wanted me to do was to be in ministry. So here I am today. Thanks. Bye.